Hello, and welcome to the Liquidity Event. We're your hosts, AJ.
And I'm Shane.
This is episode 51, being recorded on July 20th, 2022, which will air on Friday, July 22nd, 2022. 22. How you doing, Shane?
I am great. Very good. Middle of a lovely Wednesday. It's hot as hell in New York City.
It really, really is hot as hell here. Today we've got crypto crash. We've got the world economy with a big specter, or not a big specter, a specter hiding in plain sight. Find out what that is. Google stock split. Google, some more news from Google with in the HR space. And then we've got Spirit Airlines versus Frontier Airlines versus JetBlue Airlines. So lots of aviation shakeups happening. It's going to be a great show today, folks. No
Shout
IPOs.
out to all our aviation industry listeners out there. We're going to do some M&A activity. Some of the cheapest airlines out there.
Indeed. What are you up to these days? What are you doing for fun?
I just had my nephew in town for about 11 days. So I gave him a whirlwind tour of New York City. Did about 7 parks, Central, Bryant, McGorlick. There's a lot of parks in New York City, which I know them intimately because I have a dog. And we took him to a Broadway show, took him to his very first bodega, got his first cheesesteak, his first lobster roll.
Nice.
A lot of great stuff. It was pretty action-packed.
Nice. Good Uncle Shane. Uncle Shane did well.
I think so. Yeah, we'll find out in about 10 years when he's a full adult.
Did you get any feedback from your sister?
Yeah, I mean, he had a great time, ! Sick.
Cool.
Right.
Great.
10 days of whirlwind tour.
You're like, I literally stopped my life and spent 16 hours planning every moment so he would be able to experience a good mix of cultural and fun and education. And he goes, sick.
Yeah. It's very reserved person. So he had a great time.
If you could go back in time, 16-year-old Shane goes to visit made up uncle in New York City. What would you have wished you could have done for 10 days in New York City at age 16?
New York City was not a place to a 16-year-old Shane. It was like outside of the realm of possibility growing up in South Haven, Mississippi. So I have no idea. I probably also would have needed some sort of a lot of guidance.
Cool.
Yeah. What about you?
Actually, I did live in New York City in summers when I was 16. I would come visit my cousin and I would go work in her office as an intern. So I learned a lot. That's where my business acumen comes from. Shout out to Tori Shuloff, J. Rosen Showroom. Learned so much from you, Tori. Love you.
No comment on the summer internships in New York City at 16.
My family. I stayed with my family. It's my cousin.
We come from such different backgrounds. It's incredible that we're best friends. I didn't even know that about you.
Yeah, I did that for 8 years.
8 years.
She built a really successful, highly successful business.
The swimwear company that you told me about?
Yep, swimwear. Drinking anything? No, it's too early, right? We're recording a little earlier in the day.
I literally have a quart container full of black coffee sitting next to the table. Not because I'm going to drink it all, just because I just made
need to take a coffee break.
Yeah. You seem like you need a little bit of caffeine. Let's jazz it up. What you got?
Spice it up a little bit. All right. Should we get into some artículos?
Are you still reading your Good Omens book or story there? Are you done with that?
Yeah, I'm still reading Good Omens.
Why do we even talk about what we read? We should be talking about what we're watching on this podcast because I read books about 10 pages a month at this pace. Entrepreneurship doesn't leave a lot of time for casual flipping of pages in the park.
What am I watching? Oh, I just finished. This is embarrassing. I don't want to talk about it. What are you watching?
Okay, then let me switch to my definitely more embarrassing what I'm watching, which is Attack on Titan season 3 or 4. I'm trying to catch up on the anime.
Cool.
It's the one where giants eat humans in a future wherein humanity is down to a few thousand people that live inside these high walls and these monstrous humans that have no minds like zombies break in and eat them. Cool show.
Cool. Very cool.
All right. So I said anime. So now you have to tell me what you're watching.
I just finished The Gilded Age, which is an HBO show about, takes place in 1890s New York City, the robber baron era. So we got a guy who's like a railroad Titan. They don't specifically name like they do name Rockefellers, Vanderbilts, Astors. So it's like a little bit of history. As Nabil, my husband, calls it, a sentimental period piece, which is I think also what Netflix calls it as well.
Wait, who are the Astors? I know the other Titans that you mentioned.
I don't remember. Manufacturing,
Or were they in rubber?
real estate.
Yeah, that checks out. Physical things, not software.
Sure. Yeah, not software. SaaS. They were SaaS company.
Not IP. They were the first SaaS company, 1870.
And yeah, through various business ventures such as fur trading, real estate, and investment. That was John Jacob Astor. Cool. Yeah. What was the first thought? Yeah. So the Astors were a SaaS company. The Vanderbilts were what?
Logistics, AI logistics.
IT.
They used a combination of AI and machine learning to minimize costs and drive efficiencies within the logistics space.
Right. So the Astor family, it was just a glorified real estate company. So what? 3x valuation as opposed to the 100x multiple for the other SaaS companies. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, no IPOs this week. Continues to be a bit arid in the IPO space. How about some articles?
Yeah, sure. First article in the general market update and investing space comes from The Guardian. We have here, they couldn't even scream anymore. They were just sobbing. The amateur investors ruined by the crypto crash. So I guess The Guardian did a look or a profile piece on the most recent crypto crash and how it is impacting retail investors, and did some deep dives into some people that were truly spun out or had some tough times, all within the United Kingdom, I believe. This is really a sad story about some people that probably speculated a little bit too much. And I have mixed feelings about people that put their life savings into speculative assets or investments such as cryptocurrencies, arguably not intended to be investments in the first place. You get hung up on a get rich quick scheme and end up in unregulated assets that go poof.
Yeah.
In South Park, and it's gone. Poof.
Yeah. This article.
What are your takeaways from this piece?
Yeah, so my friend sent me this piece and I read it kind of like sitting on the subway, like in one go, which is my favorite way to read articles, like uninterrupted, not like at work with Slack open and emails. So it like maybe it impacted me a little bit more. But yeah, this author, Siren Kale, just want to shout her out. That this was really well done. A lot of pieces about the crypto crash are like celebrating the downfall, or like just the crypto bros. Is like she interviewed a bunch of people. She talks to a bunch of experts. She kind of like tells both sides of the story. At the end of the day, I mean, this is the UK, right? But the similar thing happened in the US. We call them investors. They're retail investors. For the most part, these are folks who haven't even invested before, maybe don't have a 401k, maybe don't have a portfolio, and they watch a YouTube video of a snake oil salesman saying you got to get into this, hot new token, and then it consumes their entire life, right? It takes over. It's all they can think about. They're in message boards. The volatility of crypto is addicting, just like the way a slot machine is addicting, right? The stock market, we see some volatility there, but in crypto, it was just wild. Also, I might need to be fact checked on this, but I think the crypto market doesn't close, right? Like the stock market has trading hours, but I believe that a bunch of the crypto markets don't. That's just constantly 24 hours a day.
They don't close. Right.
So constant stress, like stockbrokers all day long trading, stressful, but like market closes, like let's see what happens tomorrow. So just I don't know. I have a lot of empathy for the people who thought this was a good idea. I also think their personalities led them to addiction, because that's what I think this whole craze is and was. Not crypto as a technology, but just the idea of these new tokens popping up, and a like Jesus-like evangelist coming onto YouTube and saying this is the token of the future. If you're not in crypto, you're not going to be participating in the future economy. That's a very like threatening message that scared a lot of people, which is why I think a lot of people jumped on board and were willing to give years and years of savings, and now a lot of it's completely wiped out down to zero.
Yeah, I don't know. how to feel. I have mixed feelings. Like I feel bad for your retail investor that's not educated in the investment space, but a part of me also knows that if you know how to open up, like if you've got the skills, internet skills to open up a Celsius account, you also have the ability to Google normal investments or safe investments
Yeah.
or diversification, or to spend half an hour on Investopedia to figure out a portfolio that's likely going to be there. Like these people that are crying, like I lost my life savings. You put 100% of your life savings into one speculative asset, thinking, and there's this one guy that went from $3,000 to $500,000 worth of value in Dogecoin and thought that he was going to retire on that and just left it all in there and didn't take any risk off the table. And now he's in, this is incredible. He's in this place called Castle Craig, which is one of the only centers in the world that treats cryptocurrency addiction.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any stock market rehabs out there. There are gambling rehabs out there. So a lot of similarities in that space. I don't think there's any banks that will halt withdrawals to millions of customers as well, like the Celsius network did, thanks to FDIC
No, I mean
insurance.
that was the Great Depression. You want to see that in action? Watch It's a Wonderful Life. That's a run on the banks, is where they just say no more for today.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like in the South Sea bubble and like in the 1600s, like nobody knew any better because developed markets hadn't been around a long time. And in the tulip craze, like, yeah. And in the internet phase, like, hey, like everyone's doing this. There's not a ton of education out there. Like the internet just got out there. Information isn't as available as it used to be. In 2022, like there are millions of YouTube content creators, plenty of podcasts, easy to get in touch with a financial planner. And if you do a discovery call with us, which is free for 15 minutes, we will tell you that that's a terrible idea. So mixed feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. And, same. I mean, I don't like to hear about anyone losing their life savings, but also there has never been an easier time in history to educate yourself about safe investment practices, or not dramatically unnecessarily risky investment practices. And why I think this is so harmful, and why I have kind of like a gut reaction to crypto sometimes, is that crypto does not represent the investing in the stock market. And I think a lot of young people who have been burned by crypto and have experienced this are going to say, I don't want to take risk ever again because it ruined my life in my 20s. And they're going to shy away from investing in their 401ks and making smart long-term investment decisions, whether that's the stock market or real estate, because they've been scarred. And it was just such a bad experience. So that's my big fear, that there's this like ripple effect of no one's going to invest anymore because they're not going to trust markets. They can't stomach that volatility again.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of not stomaching something, I almost can't stomach the fact that in the UK, your rehab fees for crypto addiction are covered by medical insurance, even if you don't have a job.
Right.
It's the most European thing about this article. This guy lost his job due to his addiction, and he got to go to rehab, which was covered by his medical insurance.
And it's like a beautiful castle in Scotland.
Yeah, it's in a castle. Like, get fucked. Incredible. Anytime people are like complain about salaries or incomes being lower in the EU, I'm like, yeah, because you get to go to castle rehab for free. Like
Crypto castle rehab.
Yeah. Anyway, we have this global recession risk article from the New York Times, which is just a bunch of recaps about how what's causing the recession. Some people don't even think that we're in a recession, but some people think it's obvious that we are. Everyone is at least aware of the concerns around inflation and stagnation and potentials for stagflation. This article in the Times: the world economy is imperiled by force hiding in plain sight, which is another shout out to inflation. That is a large product of global supply chain issues, amongst other issues. It's also fun to note that corporate profits are also through the roof, and inflation is being used as a red herring.
Sir.
You don't, sir. How do you feel about corporations? This isn't a part of the article, but how do you feel about corporations and their ability to say, yeah, prices are up, inflation's up, sorry, y'all. And then your average retail Walmart shopper doesn't see that Walmart has record profits because they're able to, while inflation's at 9%, they've raised prices by 15, 20, and the rest is the bottom line. And they have a nice, pleasant excuse to shore up the balance sheet.
Yeah, I mean, how do I feel about it? Welcome to America. In every recession,
Mm.
there are
We don't
bailouts.
have rehab facilities here for free.
Yeah. It's a very growth corporate focused country. Like a lot of our laws are designed for corporations to succeed, and for the people who run them to be able to make, untaxed or low taxed profits. I don't like it, but that's kind of the way it's been, and probably always will be unless there's pretty sweeping change. And I think that it's always frustrating when, I mean, especially for us, when we're looking at these balance sheets, these companies are going public, and profits are up 20% this quarter. Out of one. Um, what's the analogy? Like you're talking out of one mouth and then the other ear or something. Anyway,
Speaking out of both sides of your
yeah,
mouth.
both sides of your mouth. One side of your mouth is profits are up 20.
Classic AJ.
Yeah, classic. Can't get my metaphors right, guys. Outside of one side of your mouth, profits are up 26% this quarter. Other side, unfortunately, due to rising inflation costs in our supply chain, we're gonna have to lay off 15% of our workforce. So, well, if we take the 26% of profits, like probably there was an opportunity to keep that workforce, but obviously it was a business decision that had to be made. So it's just very, very frustrating, especially for employees who are getting laid off and watching these profits roll around. I don't have a hot take other than it's just, this is America. This is the way that corporate structures are designed. That's why we are a project of capitalism and a capitalist success story.
That's why it's a great idea to invest in US based companies via the stock market, wherein they create profits and items of value, and you can participate in them very easily via our transparent and liquid markets, wherein there won't be run on the banks. Some of them do go to zero,
Yeah,
but across the thousands.
great point. Yeah, if you're mad about CEOs and CFOs making huge profits, like invest in those companies, invest in the American stock market, and share some of those profits, because.
Yeah,
And if you
I
invest for
mean,
the long
easier
term,
said than
you'll
done.
also get, potentially lower tax rates too. If you're not trading all day and watching some YouTuber tell you which stock you should sell tomorrow. So,
Speaking of stocks and how they get things that they want, we have two companies that have split their stocks so that people can invest in them more easily. Here we have an article from CNET about how Google and GameStop are going to be splitting their stock. In Google's case, it'll be a 21 to stock split. And in GameStop's case, which I don't know why the fuck I'm talking about GameStop right next to Google, it's a 4-to-1 stock split. Actually, the reason I'm talking about GameStop is because I got multiple messages from my friends
oh,
freaking out over the GameStop split because they thought that it was going to have a material impact on their investment in GameStop,
yeah.
which
So,
is on the spectrum of crypto to ETFs is somewhere in the middle.
so I wish I grabbed a screenshot of this, but like, when you Google a ticker, you Google, Alphabet's ticker, and on Monday, which is the day of the stock split, this past Monday, um, you could see like before the market opened, it was trading at like, I don't remember, 1,200 or whatever, $1,200, and then you see this literally like drop off like explain the stock split. Now, obviously, all the data's caught up, and basically historical prices have been adjusted for the stock split, which is a very
Mm-hmm.
hard thing to do when you're a financial planner or a tax accountant, to try to advise clients on what's happened so far this year when the stock is one price, and then if it goes through a split, what's happened throughout the rest of the year. That's a fun thing that we've encountered a lot with our clients who have gone from a private to a public company.
Yeah, maybe it's a good time to even talk about what a stock split is and why companies do split their stocks. In Google's case, they did a 20-to-1 stock split. So I think it's trading at 100 before, so we can assume that it was trading at about 2,000 before. So if you're a retail investor, I mean, generally companies want as many people to be able to buy their stocks as possible because liquidity is just a good thing for a number of reasons that we don't have to get into on the pod, but it's just a good thing. Imagine that it is easier for people to buy and sell your stuff means that you have a higher quality stock. So if you're trying to buy, if you've got $1,500 to invest, you literally can't afford one share of Google. But now that they've split into $100 per share, you can buy 15 shares of Google. So that's 15 times the liquidity. Or since the old liquidity was zero, I mean, it's an infinite amount more liquidity than you had before. So that assists with the quality of the stock. You might also consider splitting the stock if it's aiming to be included in a stock index, which also increases the liquidity. So an index like an ETF, maybe they will shy away from a stock just because of the rules around those investment funds require that stocks have enough liquidity in order to be included, so that when they're rebalancing their own portfolio, it's easier for them to do that because they have all these tranches of cash set aside, and it's easier to do what I just said about the retail investor. So more liquidity for that reason. And then we can see that stocks, historically, stocks that split have gained on average 25% more over the following 12 months after a split, rather than companies that have not split, which gained around 9%, which is around the market in general. Now, what are your thoughts on that? My thoughts are that if companies generally grow really fast, they split to get the price down. So they're going to continue to grow fast anyway. Like their momentum is towards quick growth. So like if you're splitting, your stock doesn't go up because you split. You had to split because you were growing, and you're going to continue to grow faster than your average stock after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think from a private company split because they want to hire more people and they don't want to give away larger slices of the pie. They want to start giving away smaller slices. So if you found a company with 500,000 shares, you think that's a lot of shares. Well, wait till you have 100 employees. Those you need a lot more shares to give away. So that's the reason why private companies do that. I think there is this weird phenomenon with these public companies, the Googles, the Teslas, the Amazons of the world. In the the current investor space, like the retail investor. In some ways, it's like you can't have like Berkshire Hathaway is sort of infamously a very expensive stock. Most people cannot own a share of Berkshire Hathaway based on the amount of savings that most Americans have in their bank account. So this idea that the Googles and the Teslas of the world want the average investor to have access to them, I think that's not obviously why they're doing the split, but I think that's a very interesting leap away from, hey, this is completely unattainable, to like, wow, this is a goal that I've always had, to own a share of Tesla stock, and now I can do it because it's under $500, and before it was a couple $1,000s.
Yeah, and like if I want to pay somebody a bonus of 1,500, but my stock is only trading at 2,000,
Right.
I can't give you 3/4 of a stock. Whereas now I can give you 15 shares because you work for my company, and that's part of your compensation.
Yeah, I think within the fintech space, like things like fractional shares have made it like a little bit easier for regular investors to own things like Berkshire Hathaway. Like we certainly own Berkshire Hathaway in our portfolio through one of the index funds we're invested in, even though I don't actually own an entire share of Berkshire Hathaway. That would make up a very large percentage of a specific fund, like portfolio that I'm in. So I hate stock splits because I'm on my spreadsheets where I'm tracking my client's inventory, and then there's a stock split, and then I got to go in and like figure out how to adjust all the quantities up and down, and it can just be very confusing. If you're an owner of that stock, it's very scary or jarring to log into your account the next day and see the stock price. But just to be clear, the way that splits work is that
Yeah.
the day before, like you still own the same amount. The pizza pie just gets cut up. I mean, we love that analogy in finance. It's the pizza pie. Like on day one, you own a pizza with 8 slices, same amount of pizza. On day 2, you own the same pizza, but there's 32 slices or something like that.
Yeah. That's actually a perfect analogy. It's just simple enough. Yeah.
It's the one that works.
If I got a pizza with 32 slices, I'd be pretty furious though.
I love a small. Okay, so there's this restaurant in Berkeley, California, called the Cheese.
Here we go.
It's a communist-owned pizza restaurant attached to a sorry, not communist, collective. It's a collective. All the employees own it, so it's
sure.
communist.
Yeah.
My
I can read between the lines.
my hippie uncle calls it the communist cheese shop. Anyway, their pizza's amazing, but the way that they serve it, like their thing, it's like huge lines always. You get a pizza, and then like on top of the big pizza is like this tiny little like sliver sample slice. That's just like their signature thing. It made me think of that if you're cutting a pizza into like 32 slices.
A sample slice.
Yeah. It's really cute.
Cute.
Maybe we can do a on the on the ground episode of the Cheese Board to explain stock splits with their tiny pizza slices.
I would love that. I would love to do a video for our audience of you splitting up a pizza like a stock split. Speaking of splits, I've got a split reverse, aka a merger here going down between JetBlue Airways was supposed to merge with. Oh, this is your article. Why don't you take this fella here?
Yeah. So Frontier Airlines, a lot of people's not favorite low cost airline. The thing with low cost airlines is like they just stay what they are. Like low cost, that's what you get. Like don't expect comfy seats, don't expect your bags to arrive on time. Like it's just low cost. Anyway, So what is it? It's Spirit puts in an all cash offer to buy Frontier, but then JetBlue comes in a little bit later with a better offer. Is that what happened?
Yes.
And it's all cash, right? So there's no stock
Hmm.
typically with this type of merger with these big companies. They would use stock in some kind of like swap or some kind of merger, but in this, it's very straightforward, simple transaction. It's like, here's some cash, we own you now. Um,
Yeah. So let's say I'm a company, I'm merging with you, AJ. My company is worth $30. Your company is worth $100. You can either buy my company for $30, or you can say all of the shareholders of Shane Co. get 30 shares of AJ Co. And that's a stock merger as opposed to a cash merger
yeah,
or stock
very well
acquisition.
explained. Yep, good analogy there. So this is like a
But if
developing.
the value of AJ Co. goes down,
Then your value
then the
goes
old
down.
number of shares, yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
if
Well,
yeah, so if it's kind of an interest, it's like, what do you want? Like if you built a company, like do you want to be bought outright, take that cash and run, pay taxes on it, or do you want to participate in the growth, adding your company to this other company? Business principles, typically when you add two things together, the multiple is bigger in the future. So stock that type of merger is a lot more common than all cash. But this is like a developing story. So like this is like
mhm,
they keep delaying. They just delayed again. So Spirit Airlines basically gets to the shareholders of Spirit. I'm sorry, the shareholders of Frontier basically get to decide who's going to buy them. And the weird like nerdy equity compensation uh, angle to this article is that it's the ISS, which is essentially it's a proxy company. So what they do is they
mhm,
do a bunch of research and they basically advise these huge institutional investors about the ways they should vote as the shareholders. So if you're like the Harvard endowment, you probably own a lot of stock in this company. So you will actually vote as a shareholder in such things as who should buy us, should we proceed with this merger. So ISS is this company that actually they're typically like buried in like those when you get those like big pamphlets in the mail or you get those like emails that you just like ignore. It's like proxy shares. Like, what is this? Like, that's what this company does. Is they do all the research. They advise you on whether you should vote for Spirit or vote for JetBlue in this merger.
yeah. It's a fancy word for liaison, which is a fancy word for delegate, which is a fancy word for agent. Like they just do things on your behalf, right? Institutional Shareholder Services, ISS. This is how they're going to go, and then they aggregate all those shares. It's kind of wild that there's like millions of shareholders and they all get a vote. Someone's gonna kind of have to aggregate all
Well,
those.
it's really weird because they also like it's just like by default they have a lot of power. It's kind of what it is. It's like no one wants to be bothered. Like I'm not going to vote about the corporate governance for the thousands of stocks that I own as a minority shareholder. So it's just like by default they get to decide which
Hmm.
way the shareholders are voting. And there's some
Hmm.
interesting pieces about like, well, there's a bit of a conflict of interest there because sometimes they're hired by the companies, and then they're also hired by they represent both interests, both the shareholders and the companies themselves. So very cool. I remember
Wow,
what?
we run
Oh
out of time.
shit! Wow, Jesus!
We're only
Oh my
halfway.
god!
We're only halfway through our articles. Having too much fun talking about
Wow,
proxies.
time flies when you're having fun, folks. See that? Flies. Get it?
I thought you were going to say time's fun when you're having
Oh yeah,
flies.
that's a typical AJ.
Kermit the
Typical
Frog.
AJ mess around, as we like to say around here. Shane, you want to read us out since we are out of time?
Yeah, thank you for joining us on episode 51 of the Liquidity Event. You can email us at liquidityevent@brooklynify.com. Leave us a voicemail and we'll play it on the air. Show notes can be found at brooklynify.com/episode 51. And BKFI stands can leave us a review if they want to be weird about it. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. See you next